Welcome back, travelers. I'm going to just jump right into this one because this one's about Chandra Nalaar, and she has quite a bit of backstory that is worth noting for this particular chapter. You see, it begins, Chandra Nalaar is a pyromancer, meaning she works with fire. She's a fire mage, basically. And as a result, her hair, when she gets mad, catches on fire. It's really interesting. But she's from a place called Kaladesh. In the last episode, you may remember I mentioned that Kaladesh is basically a world made of metal. Like inventions. It's an inventor world. Imagine if every single person was Thomas Edison except they actually did something. If everybody was Tesla. Yeah, that works. The car works fine in this example as well. The point being that Chandra, instead of being a person that creates things, she's a person that blows stuff up with fire. And so she wasn't very welcome there, and it took a while before she went back. She found out her mom wasn't dead, and they overthrew an entire government. And things are getting a little bit better with the new government they're instating. It's a whole revolt-ing thing. So it opens up with the Gatewatch, which are basically like the Avengers of the Magic storyline. And they're drinking hot chocolate. It's kind of the best thing ever, just to see these characters that you play the game and they're just supposed to be killing each other the whole time, but they're all just sitting here and drinking some hot chocolate, and like you get basically introduced to all the characters that are members of the Gatewatch. So it starts off with Chandra, but she looks over at Jace. Jace is the person that if you have at least seen some cover art or something about Magic, it's likely you've seen Jace. He's basically just a guy in a blue hood who is super nerdy without the glasses. It doesn't make sense, but you know, that's how mind mages work. So he's there. Jace and Chandra, they're usually at odds with each other, but they because he's very logical, she is very emotional. But Jace is kind of a cool guy now because he became a pirate for a while. Then there's Teferi. Teferi has all sorts of cool stuff involved with him because he's a time mage, and he did a whole bunch of other things in the past and some kind of futures in some cases. He rewinds time. So he is not the right age by any stretch of the imagination because he was a kid that... First off, when he was a kid, he got trapped in a time bubble that froze him in time, basically, until they could figure out a way to get him out of it. And then he tried to drink some water to make himself older, which kind of worked, but kind of didn't. And then that's a whole other story. I would love to talk about that. But back to this. Teferi, next up is Ajani. Ajani is from that plane I mentioned earlier called Alara in the other episode. Alara is basically where one of Nicol Bolas's first major comebacks happened. Because Bolas was an old bad guy from the old stories, and he kind of came back in a big way with Alara. It was his first time as a planeswalker showing up being like, I'm a bad, mean dragon man. And so he shows up and he starts blowing stuff up and he starts like combining an entire plane and causing a whole bunch of chaos and destruction. Well, Ajani stopped him momentarily and Bolas ran away. So Ajani basically owes everything that is bad in his life to Bolas. Ajani lost his brother. He lost his clan. He lost his plane, basically, all to Bolas. And so he was vengeant at one point, but he got better. And now he's basically just a mentor more than anything else. But he is a lion man. He literally is a lion person, a cat man. And it shows at points where he roars with joy. Similarly, there's another mentor, Jaya Ballard. Jaya is basically just an old Chandra. She was the original Chandra, but because they didn't have a way to make her stay young, Wizards of the Coast, the people who make the game, decided they needed a new one, and they made Chandra. And now they brought back Jaya, and Jaya's cooler, but because Chandra's the main character, they're like, oh well, I guess it's Chandra instead of Jaya. And of course, there's the best planeswalker ever invented, literally, Karn. He's a silver golem. He's from the same time, roughly, as Teferi. And the two... Karn's main thing is that he's made of silver. He's a golem. He's technically inorganic and should not be able to hold a spark. But there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into that. I have the stories for that if anybody would be interested in hearing about that. It's a huge plot line. Honestly, I like it more than this, but that's mainly nostalgia, I think. Anyways, You have all these characters, they're all working together. Some of them are technically not part of the Gatewatch because they didn't take any oaths, which are like these special magical things that allow them to be summoned basically in times of need. However, the last person here is Gideon. Gideon at this point is kind of late because all the members of the Gatewatch and the Planeswalkers, they were going to meet and have some hot chocolate because why not? Before they went to go fight a giant evil dragon. But Gideon is taking a while, mainly because he went back to find one of their other friends, Liliana. But Liliana is not there. Liliana made contracts with demons. Yeah, 4 of them. And of course, the person who helped her get those contracts was Bolas. And Bolas has just, basically right before the story, showed up after Liliana killed the 4th demon and said, hey, because you killed all the guys that were working with your contract, I own you now, and come work for me. So Liliana doesn't really have a choice. She's being forced to work with Bolas, but that means that she is now an enemy of the Gatewatch. So Gideon's there. Gideon was like, you could be good. And she's like, I'm sorry, I gotta go. So Liliana's gone. Gideon doesn't know why. Chandra's upset. Literally everyone is freaking out because Liliana is kind of like one of the main people that could help them because she has an artifact called the Chain Veil that's like super strong. The last person missing that Chandra thinks about, I believe, right here, is Nisa. Nisa being a person who was part of the Gatewatch, who broke her oath because she felt she needed to go home and take care of the people that were there. She's an elf, and she has a lot of powers with ley lines, which are basically like, imagine the central nervous system, or the better, I guess the circulatory system of an entire plane that gives the mana and the power that lets everything else work in that place. That's really what Nisa's main ability is. And so she was also really helpful, but she's gone. So 2 of their most helpful people are gone. Gideon is still got some use, I guess, other than being super charismatic and just like generally epic. He's got a sword that can kill a dragon known as Bolas, and Bolas kind of needs to die. The sword he has is called Black Blade, and it's like super strong, and I'll get more into that during a Gideon chapter. But to continue, basically the Gideon gets there. He's like, Liliana didn't show up, and sorry, I guess it's not going to work out. I'm really upset. And they're like, well, if she didn't show up, she's probably working with Bolas, because they knew that there was some kind of thing going on there. So basically all the Planeswalkers, they have to leave. And this is what was really cool, because you may remember in Teo's chapter, I mentioned that he disappears with a final burst of white geometry. So the idea is that because he's a Planeswalker who works with that kind of like shield stuff, he disappeared in that fashion. But in these guys, they each have very specific ways. For instance, with Chandra and with Jaya, they disappear in balls of flame because they're pyromancers. Then you have Gideon and Ajani, who are both white mana based, and they literally are just like sprinkled gold falls down. Storms of gold, which I guess is supposed to be like cloudy. I don't know. It says Teferi seemed to transform into a blue whirlwind that swept him away, because he's more blue-white, very balanced in that sense, and so he was like, and he's gone, right? The best one to me was Karn, because the way it describes it is Karn simply vanished with a sharp metallic ping. Literally everyone has like these really cool like flashy exits, and Karn is a ping, like ping. He's just like he's this real big metallic like just golem, and he's ping, and he's gone. It's the best. With that, I'd say that pretty much sums up the 3rd chapter about Chandra Nalaar. And there were a lot of characters introduced. A lot of the first chapters are like this, with just basically just dropping names, dropping the players. And they don't give you a ton of information on who they were or what they did, because there's a lot of resources out there for people to find more information on these guys if they want to. Or you could just spend cumulative hours reading novel after novel to get to know these guys. Especially in the case of Karn and Jaya and Teferi. They're these very interesting characters from that timeline, from the past, really. And now we're going to go back to Ravnica with this next chapter. With that said, I will see you guys in the next episode. Please leave a like if you liked this. Please comment if you think I'm going too fast or not going into enough detail on certain things, or if you feel like certain details are unnecessary. Everything that I say is literally just spewing out of my face, and it's just stuff that I feel like is relevant to the story. Thanks again for watching. Until then, travel well.